Today on Brainpower, we're going to have some fun with more structured prompts. Hello, friends. It's Josh. Today, we are going to be talking about structured prompts. If you would like to join me as I do the hands-on exercises today, remember, you can always go to my website /Brainpower, where you will see all the episodes and downloadable worksheets. And the worksheet for today's episode contains 2 structured prompts that we are going to go through. So with that, let's go ahead and let's jump in to today's topic, structured prompts. I love structured prompts. And, it's interesting that there has been a maturation that is happening with structured prompts. And I know that for some of you that have attempted them, that it can be somewhat confusing, especially with some of the formats that structured prompts come in. But today, I'm going to introduce to you a method of creating a structured prompt that is going to be extremely easy to implement. All right. So what I like to do is first go in and talk about one of the structures that we'll be using here today, and it's TRACI. So TRACI is task, role, audience, create, intent. And in episode 8, I went deep into TRACI, and you'll be seeing the TRACI format here today. And it's a great overall prompt structure. Now, there are other prompt structures that are out there other than TRACI. Another one that I use frequently to do very light work or test work in GPT 3.5 before moving over to the 4 model would be task, role, and details. So this is relatively simple. Also, I'll flip it around. I'll start with the role, then the task, and the details of the task. So again, this is very approachable, easy to use. Another one is RAFT, which is role, audience, format, and task. Again, just a variation off of TRACI. One that you are going to see next week when I create a video script is going to be CoStar. Love that name. Context, objective, style, tone, and audience. So the style and tone are going to come into play when we create the video script in the next episode. So again, these are other prompt structures that you'll see out there. There's many, many more. Again, depending upon your objective and what you are striving to get from the model, there are structures galore out there as you go in and possibly search for additional structures. But today we're going to be using TRACI. In regards to programming formats or code formats for structured prompts, JSON is one format that I use. Now, it's not necessarily approachable for anyone who is not a programmer. All right, it uses brackets and it could look a little intimidating, but it's extremely effective when you're working with a team and you need to isolate a specific line within that JSON structure and make an update to the prompt. Another format is YAML, yet another markup language. And this is much more approachable. We don't have so much code formatting in there in regards to like brackets and braces and things like that, and colons. At least there's some colons in there, but not, too many. But again, it's more approachable. Another one that I've seen out there is one called Macromancy, and it is way, way detailed when it comes to programmatic code. The last one, and the one that we're going to focus in on today, is Markdown. Now, Markdown, believe it or not, if you're using the GPT model, will come back in the results that you get. And Markdown is used to format heading 1, heading 2, heading 3, bullets, italics, tables, everything that you get from the model in regards to a formatted output comes back as Markdown. And we're actually going to use Markdown inside of our structured prompt. Now, what exactly is Markdown? What does it look like? Well, Markdown is really simple. When you want to format a header, like a heading 1, in Markdown, all you need to do is insert a pound symbol before the word. That's it. And when it's interpreted, that'll give you heading 1. You need a heading 2, 2 pound symbols. Heading 3, 3 pound symbols, and so on. In addition to that, there's also italic, which is going to be your word wrapped around asterisks, a single asterisk, and bold is going to be 2 asterisks wrapped around the word. You can also use underscores. That will also work for Markdown. All right. So with that, let's go in and we're going to go back to some of our prompts. And I wanted to let you know that if you are looking for some prompts to start out with, I do have a repository of prompts. This is my 250 prompts file for learning and development, and that can be found at my website /150 prompts. Now, obviously, I've moved from 150 to 250, but we kept the URL. So that is the correct URL, and you can jump in there and grab these prompts. Now, one prompt I do want to show you is an example of JSON for an e-learning storyboard. So you can, again, get access to this just by going in and signing up and getting access. Now, what I'm going to do is go in here and just type in e-learning and do a search. And there's my e-learning storyboard prompt. And if we take a look over here, let me go in and just zoom in on that. So, and let me get rid of that. There we go. So if we take a look at this particular prompt, this builds an e-learning storyboard. Now, I'm not going to get into all the specifics here. It's fairly intense, right? But this is in JSON format. It's a lot. If you're not a programmer, this can be intimidating and intense, but it is a really cool prompt. And if you go in here and you add your course outline down here at the bottom, it will knock out a generic e-learning storyboard. Now, you can continue to modify this prompt and focus in on a specific authoring tool like Storyline, Rise, or Adobe Captivate, and it will produce specific interaction types to that tool. So very cool prompt, but not approachable. Again, if you're not a programmer, this could be just confusing to look at. So what we want to do is go in and simplify, what exactly is happening with the prompt. So get ready. Let's go ahead and open up that worksheet, which is going to give you a little bit of information on Markdown at the top and give you these 2 prompts. And we're going to go over those prompts together in detail and break them down. So let's look at the first prompt. I'm going to switch over to ChatGPT. And for the first prompt, let's go ahead and place that in there and take a look at it. Now, alrighty. So for the task, and I think what's going to be easier is I actually have this prompt in its entirety in a notepad. Let me just bring that over for a moment just so you can see it. And that's going to be a little bit easier to describe. So I've pasted the prompt in ChatGPT, but here it is in Notepad. Let me just go ahead and zoom in on this. So you'll notice that this is very different from the JSON format, and it's leveraging Markdown to give the model emphasis, right? So when I put a pound in front of task, that's like the model showing it's like heading 1, like, hey, this is important. And we have a description of the task, create an action plan and challenges. So that's the goal of the prompt, is to actually go ahead and produce an action plan and challenges for a certain topic, and we'll get to that in a moment. The role. So the role is in heading 1, and the role definition as professional coach is wrapped in 2 asterisks on each side, so it's in bold. So again, the model is going to interpret that as important. And then we have a definition here of a professional coach. We get down to the audience, and the audience are professional adults, again, wrapped in asterisks, so that's in bold. And then we have a definition of that audience. Create. Okay, so this is the real important part here. And again, I apologize for that Grammarly pop-up. Let's see if I can turn that off. I'm just going to go ahead and just have it do its thing. It's always something, right? You know, now I got to go in, and I can't turn that off. Oh, well, we'll roll with it here today. All right. So just excuse the overlay. Back to the prompt. So we have our create actions and challenges. Let me zoom or scroll up so you can see that there, or down. The action plan and challenges include specific goals and timelines tailored to the audience needs. Challenges must be relevant and realistic. Bop, bop, bop. It is crucial to provide necessary resources and support, so on. Now you can go and modify this and make it your own. The important part is down here in intent, where we're going to modify this element right here. This is going to be your topic. And so you'll want to go in and swap that out. So for instance, the topic for growth and development is how to cook a smoked potato salad. What else would I use, right? Again, you can add whatever topic that you want, that you would like to put in there. Make it your own. Make it your own. And I'm just going to add that to ChatGPT down here. Okay, one other thing I want to point out is, if you noticed in the JSON formatting that everything was essentially kind of like, it was like truncated, meaning that there was no full sentences in the JSON. We can just pop over there and take a look at it again. Again, ignore the Grammarly pop-up. But again, it's going in and it's very succinct. Remember, words are important. And the one thing I do love about the JSON is that, we don't have paragraphs in here. We essentially have sentences or shortened representations of what we are looking for within the prompt. Whereas the one that we're working on today, it's paragraphs, right? This is very, very approachable. And if you're just getting started with structured prompts, this is my recommendation in regards to formatting. That way you can keep things organized, and you can go in and just describe, using natural language, what you need in that specific area, whether it's the objective or the task and the audience and what you're creating and so on. All right. So again, there's no kind of magic formula here as far as the overall sentences that you use. Just go ahead and verbalize and then make adjustments to it as you begin to work with it. All right, well, I'm going to use the 4 model here today. Let's go ahead and run this prompt. And while that prompt is running, I don't know, let me see if I can get in here real quick and turn this off. It's always something, right? So I'm going to let that run, and we'll take a look at that in just a moment. In the meantime, I do want to go in and just talk for a moment about, as you are building out your structured prompts and you're getting really, really great responses back from the model, keep your prompts organized. And I'm just going back to my 250 prompts file or site. Now, you could use Excel, you could use Google Sheets. Store your prompts. You go in and you do all this work, and you can like go ahead and try to find the prompt back in ChatGPT or whatever model that you're using. But you'll want to build a repository, because there is a natural progression from when you create a great prompt to then start placing that prompt in an integrated workflow. And I want to share with you one of my workflows that I have for YouTube. And so instead of like parking the prompt in a prompt library, this particular storage is a workflow. And so you can see that I have here YouTube title, and here's the prompt for the YouTube title, and so on. And so like YouTube script, stills, like here's a prompt going into Midjourney. And this is all part of my YouTube support process here to support a video. Now, eventually, that is all going to be automated. And so you can see the natural progression here. So, the first step is to get in there and get your hands dirty with ChatGPT, get your structured prompt in there. And then once you have some wins, go ahead and get it into a prompt library. You may share that with your peers or your team. And then you'll be putting that prompt eventually into a workflow, and those workflows are going to be automated. So again, it's a natural progression there. Okay, let's take a look at the results. So it created an action plan for crafting a smoked potato salad. And I can see in here the weeks, the goal, the task, the resources, and there's a reflection, weeks 3 and 4, 5 and 6. Now, again, every time that you run this, you're going to get a different result, right? So I can come in and rerun it, and it's going to knock out a completely different result, probably different number of weeks and so on. So it's just always interesting to go in and see the variations as you run this again. Also, the model is going to, it's going to drive the quality of the results coming back. So if I were to go ahead and run the same structured prompt in the 3.5 model, you'll notice that when I run this prompt in there, that you're not going to get as deep or as rich as a result. So I can go in and run that same prompt in the 3.5 model. We'll compare it here. And I can just see visually that it's not as deep. It came back pretty fast, but it's a little light compared to the 4 model, right? And we can see that here. All right. So that was kind of cool as far as seeing the structured prompt using Markdown, right? With headings and bold, and then paragraphs describing that. Let's take a look at the second prompt. So the second prompt that we're going to use here today is a new hire assessment strategy. All right, so this assessment strategy is going to include, if I go down here, both formative and summative assessments. Remember, anywhere that you see the X in here, you need to change that, right? Otherwise, you're going to get a generic response back. Again, what I love about this format, it's so approachable because I'm not going in here and using any kind of JSON or any kind of programming code in here for the prompt. It's just essentially, paragraphs describing role and audience and task and so on. So now let's go in and let's try running this prompt. Now, for this one, it's going to be a sales course, so knowledgeable about solution selling. Again, you need to go in, and I'll zoom in here in just a moment. So I'm going in. There we go. And I am modifying this before I actually paste it into ChatGPT. So now you could copy and paste it, put it in ChatGPT and make the modifications there. I'm just doing it right here in Notepad for the moment. This is going to be my Grammarly episode because, of course, this thing is just hanging out here the whole entire episode. It is always something. All right, so I think we got it here. Let me just make sure I have everything in there. Yes. Okay, that looks good. All right, so now I'm going to go in and copy this whole entire prompt. We'll go back over to ChatGPT. Remember, you got to make a new conversation, right? You don't want to use the same context window. Otherwise, all the prior prompts and all the words, the results coming back from the model is going to influence the result coming back. So you always want to go ahead and create a new one. And I'm going to go ahead and paste that in there and run it. And let's see what we get. So now the model's coming back with this assessment strategy for solution selling. Pre-assessment, formative, summative, peer evaluation, self-assessments, so on. And the idea is that you'll want to go in and make these prompts your own. So if I was doing frontline work and I wanted to add an observation, right, a managerial observation, I would just simply go in and emphasize that in the prompt, specifically within the create section. So, there is a method to the madness. And the idea is that when you get really good with these structures, again, let me go ahead and bring up and zoom out slightly here on this. When you get really good with these structures, now you feel empowered to go in and make the adjustments that you need to tweak or to modify to make them your own, right? So, in the create section, again, it mentions formative and summative assessments, but I could easily come in here and tweak this and, say managerial observations and then run it again. So let's go ahead. Let's try that. Let's tweak this a little bit. So I'm going to go back to the prompt. Here's the prompt and click on the little edit button down here. We're going to go into the create section and I'm going to add in here also add managerial observations. Nothing complex. All right. I mean, I could be more verbose about this, but I am just getting in there and making a very slight tweak. And what we want to see is when we run this prompt is that the observation is listed as part of the assessment strategy. So I went in, placed that little tweak in there in the create section. Let's go ahead and submit this. Yeah, I'm trying to dismiss Grammarly. I see what I need to do is just refresh my browser. Maybe I'll do that. Once this is done, let me go ahead and just refresh. Oh, it is just stuck. I know. This will forever be my Grammarly episode, and I'll need to make sure that I completely shut that thing down next time. It's always something. Hey, look what we got here. Managerial observation. There we go. It's in there. Isn't that wonderful? So I hope that you have, um, again, gotten some skills here in regards to structured prompts. Uh, it is a process and it's something that you need to continue to work on. Hopefully, the Markdown format is very approachable to you, and that's something that you'll be able to use as you move forward with your prompting skills. All right. Well, it was so nice hanging with you here today. And remember, if you need to get in touch with me, you can always send me a DM on LinkedIn and you can see all the episodes recorded. Remember, you can just go up to my website /Brainpower. Again, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I will see you in the next episode. Take care.